What up, reader fam? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you another video in my Books I've Read Not So Recently series, the series on my channel where I share with you some books that I've read not so recently. It's a good old bookish time. Love sharing the book wealth with y'all. I've got 5 books to talk about today. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if there are any books that I talk about today that you've read, be sure to let me know down below in the comments your thoughts because I want to hear from you. But without further ado, let's hop on into it. Hippity, hoppity, on into it. Here we go. First up here I have The Perfect Escape. This book follows 2 perspectives. We've got Nate and Kate. Nate is a character who is hungry to become rich. He wants that cash money flow, and he'd do just about anything to get it. Kate, on the other hand, wants nothing more than just to press the start over button on life. I feel that strongly. She dreams of escaping her controlling father and leading the life that she's always wanted to lead. After Nate and Kate connect at work, they end up entering a survival competition that could lead them to some big bucks, big buckaroos, which would in turn hopefully help them in achieving their dreams. This was a really fun read. I will say that I felt like at the beginning it was trying a wee bit hard at being overly funny, but the humor did grow on me after falling into the flow. Flow, baby, flow. It was fun kind of seeing the awkward falling in love moments, like those moments when you first get really interested in somebody and you feel like you have to mesh well with them on every topic, so every card they play, you play that same card. It can be like, I love green beans. You love green beans? I love green beans too! Meanwhile, in your head, you're like, yo, I hate green beans. It overall just has a really fun tone throughout it, and I feel like that's where this book excels, but it also does manage to touch on some deeper topics throughout it as well. Both our main characters have this urgency to change their lives, and we're seeing how they're chasing after that, and it also has a focus on family. They both come from very different home lives, and we see how that affects their day-to-day lives and also the way in which they interact. And in a lot of ways, their home situations is kind of what balances out the characters. Their differences balance each other out. Their character teeter-totter is on a level playing field. And it brings in a lot of interesting back and forth because of how different those circumstances at home are. Overall, it's a book that's just a perfect escape from reality. The title says it all, my friends. It takes your mind off the chaos of the world and is like, here, have some fun, enjoy the moment. Next up, I read Escape from Camp 14. This is a non-fiction book that follows the story of Shin Dong-hyuk, who escaped from a prison camp in North Korea. It basically goes into all the gritty detail of what life was like there and how he escaped and what life has been like after his escape. I liked this one, but I didn't really enjoy hearing the commentary from the author who helped write Shin Dong-hyuk's story. This one is gruesome at times, but reality is the situation that he grew up in was gruesome. There were so many times where I was just completely angered by what I was reading because of what Shin Dong-hyuk had gone through. From the awful things that he had to go through when going to school, from the awful things that he had to see on a day-to-day basis as a child, he was basically forced to see the killings of his loved ones. And reading those moments, you can't help but just feel how unreal it is, but reality is, it is real. Something that I really didn't enjoy about the author is that there was an emphasis on the fact that Shin Dong-hyuk had been changing his story, but we call that trauma. Anyone who has been through what he's been through in life is gonna have a hard time facing the truth and laying it all out on the table. And the author kept being like, inaccuracies. And meanwhile, I'm over here like, let's call it what it is. Trauma. Can you tell that I was annoyed by that at all? Because I was very annoyed. It's wild how Shin Dong-hyuk was kind of in competitive mode growing up. Like, he saw his mom as competition for things like food. And it wasn't until years later after he'd escaped and kind of settled down that he realized that people generally look at families as comfort. But because of how twisted the system was that he grew up in, he had never really felt that way about his mom. And we have these moments where he reveals the fact that when he was beaten, he felt like he deserved it because he felt like he was paying for the sins of his parents. Just hearing the fact that he felt like he deserved it was so heartbreaking to read about, and the fact that he's probably going to be a prisoner for the life that he once lived his whole life because of the fact that he feels guilty for feeling any kind of happiness knowing what he left behind, knowing that there are people still suffering today. Overall, this was a very tragic story but very eye-opening, and it definitely does have a very hopeful tone. I'm hoping to read more books about people who have escaped from North Korea, but specifically ones that are directly from the escapees and not ones that are written secondhand, just because I didn't really enjoy hearing this author's commentary on North Korea. Like, I didn't really want to hear his commentary. I just wanted to hear directly from Shin Dong-hyuk. Next up, I read Opposite of Always. This book follows our main character Jack, who ends up at a party one night and meets this girl named Kate. That's the second book I've read not so recently with the character named Kate. They instantly hit it off, connecting over things like cereal, and of course they end up growing a relationship together. But the thing is, Kate ends up dying, and when she dies, it sends Jack back in time to that same reunite at the party where he first met Kate. He's basically given a second chance with a different outcome for Kate. This book makes use of the loop format where basically the character gets to press restart on a situation and replay it out again. He gets to go back in time and attempt to fix things. Loopdeloop. Now this is obviously something that at times could have felt redundant, but I felt like Justin A. Reynolds did a great job of making each loop feel different enough that you weren't seeing the same situation through the same lens. I will say that a few of the loops at the beginning were a bit repetitive, but over time our main character is making different choices and kind of changing up how the loop plays out. That way we weren't just seeing the same situation over and over and over again. It was kind of nice following a character who wasn't always making the right decisions and seeing how that affected the story, because each time Jack, our main character, is thrown back in time and gets the chance to like replay out the story, he does switch it up every now and then and make different choices. And sometimes I was like, boy, the choices you are making are questionable, but do what you gotta do. It was kind of fun though, because when he starts out the story messy, it just gets messier and messier, and that was really fun to see unfold. Something random that I really liked about this book was the parental relationship in it. Talk about showcasing a healthy relationship. We love to see it. Also, the parents were present. Hallelujah, they escaped the missing YA parents party. That deserves an applause. Clap, clap, clap. Next up, I read the graphic novel Just So Happens. This story follows our main character Yumiko, who has created a life for herself in London after being born and raised in Japan. When she receives a phone call from her brother that her dad has died, she travels back to Japan after a very long time, and it brings up a path to the past that she has been trying to push away. While I enjoyed this book, it wasn't the most standout graphic novel I've ever read. It's an interesting look at grief, and we follow a character who is trying to kind of avoid those feelings. She'd rather do anything else than face the music, and there's a lot that goes into that. It's overflowing with Japanese culture, which is something that I really liked and was drawn to throughout the reading process. It focuses kind of on the funerals that take place in Japan, and it also has a focus on N-O-H, which is a form of theater in Japan. And I especially loved that aspect. I mean, the funeral aspect was also very interesting, and just kind of how drawn out the funerals are in Japan, but the no theater aspect brought in a magical element, and that really drew me in. I was here for it. I gobbled that right up. Give me magic, I will eat it. One of the themes or conversations that it kind of brought up was the pressure of honoring your parents. And I really enjoyed kind of seeing that play out and how that played into how our main character was dealing with grief and how that affected the way that she was grieving her parent that she lost. It talks about how sometimes we can just feel really guilty because we're not living up to our parents' expectations that they've put on us. Drowning in parental expectations. And just how that can like hold us back from really chasing after what we want in life. I will say that overall it wasn't the most clear messaging in terms of the themes that it was covering, but I almost feel like that's because it was a very slice of life story, so there wasn't that much time to like really dig deep. And I just overall ended up feeling okay about this one. It was just a little bite of life story and I wasn't mad at it. And lastly, I read The Sisters Grimm. This story follows a group of half-sisters who are connected by blood and magic. They were separated at the age of 13, but 5 years later they're on a mission to reunite and hone their abilities. But to achieve this, they must figure out a way to return to Everwhere, which is the land of their childhood dreams. I really didn't like this book. Aesthetically, it's beautiful, but the content, oof. I think the thing that really threw me off was the constant switching of perspectives, and I mean constant, like every paragraph we were switching perspectives. That might be a little over exaggeration, but no surprise there. But it was just too much for me. Too much, too much. Switch, switch. No more, no more. The timeline itself was also just a bit of a struggle for me. It just made the story even more choppy. Chop, chop. And to top it all off, I personally had a hard time knowing who was who throughout the story because the characters just didn't feel super distinct in terms of characterization. The personalities kind of melded together, making it hard to get invested in any of them. And man, overall, this was just a big bummer. And let me tell you, I was expecting this book to be on the top of my 2020 favorites list. I was excited to get into it, but I left it realizing that it's gonna be on my worst books of 2020 list, and I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I don't like it. Obviously, there had to have been something in it that kept me reading because I reached the end, so that's saying something. Like something about it kept me invested. Maybe it was the pacing because the constant switching of perspectives did lend itself to help the pacing get fast. And another positive thing that I can mention is actually the climax. Like that climax was written so beautifully. I was hooked. I was sucked in. I was focused on what was happening, and it was great. I just wish that the whole book would have been like that climax at the end. But overall, this book just ended up not being one for me. It didn't suit my taste, and that makes me really sad. So those were 5 books that I read not so recently. We had quite a bit of a mixed bag here. We have a young adult contemporary, we have a nonfiction, we have an adult young adult question mark. I would say it's more adult fantasy. We had a young adult contemporary with a hint of magic, some time travel, some loop-de-loops, and a graphic novel, so I'm pretty satisfied with the variety here. If you haven't read any of these books though, then just let me know down below in the comments a book that you read recently that you either loved or hated. Spill that tea. If you like this video, be sure to go and hit that like button. If you want to see more bookish content from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and hit that bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your day is bright, that tomorrow is brighter. Keep reading what your heart desires, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye, yo!